You are listening to episode 576 of the Juicebox Podcast. I'm very excited to tell you that Erika Forsyth is back. You may remember Erika from episode 407, 479, or 514. She's been here quite a bit, talking about the emotional side of type 1 diabetes. Erika is a marriage and family therapist. She also has type 1, and she's been incredible on this show. Today, Erika will help me tackle a number of incredibly difficult questions that were sent in by children. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're a California resident and you think Erika can help you, check her out at erikaforsyth.com. As you may know, I'm on a mission to add as many people to the T1D exchange survey as I possibly can here in November. It's my own little Diabetes Awareness Month thing I'm doing. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of a type 1, head over, take you less than 10 minutes to fill out the survey. It's amazing. You'll help people. You'll help the show. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by TrialNet. You know TrialNet. They provide type 1 diabetes risk screening at no cost to the relatives of people living with type 1. I'll tell you all about them a little later in the show. TrialNet.org/juicebox. About 5 months ago, I had what I thought was a good idea. I thought I would do like a defining diabetes series for children based on their questions about diabetes. I thought it was going to be great. So I go on Facebook and I ask, hey, can you tell me some of the questions that your kids have asked about diabetes? And then what happened next was not what I expected. Okay. So I am looking at a Facebook thread here that is now 22 weeks old that has 256 responses in them. One more heartbreaking than the next. And so yes. I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I'm going to do it with Erika. And so I don't know what this is supposed to be. I'm just going to jump right into it, okay? And I want to try to get your top line responses, and I think the conversation will find its way. That's my goal. Okay. So sounds good. Yes. So I just threw up there and I said, hey, do your children ask diabetes-related questions that are difficult to answer? And, you know, like, I just thought it would be like, you know, even put up some examples like, will I have diabetes the rest of my life? You know, will I still have diabetes when I'm 6? Like that kind of stuff. These are the things that Arden asked me when she was younger. Right. The very first one out of the box, somebody says, my child has asked me, what happens if my blood sugar goes to 0? And I'm like, so let's just start there and see how far we can get through this. Okay. How valuable is it for children and at what age to understand the real consequences of them getting too much insulin? And do you run the risk of scaring them about their insulin too?
I think my first thought is, gosh, I wish I knew what age each child, you know, when a parent was writing in, because I think it has to be so relevant and appropriate and make it age appropriate, right?
Well,
each
I
response.
have the age for you here. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. So do you want to tell me or do you want me just to guess?
No. They said the child is 6 years old. Ooh, Erika, you're breaking up. You're gone, actually.
No, I'm here. I was here. I didn't press anything.
I know you didn't, but the system it booted you like you had a weak signal or something like that. Okay, so sorry about that. 6 years old. What happens if my sugar goes to 0?
Okay, so I think in keeping it appropriate and not fear, you know, causing any inappropriate fear, but also you want to create a respect around the insulin. I think if I were the parent in this response, I would say, well, we have all of these precautions and tools to prevent us from going to 0. And that would be the case, particularly with, you know, the CGM. And I think that the child seems to be asking like kind of worst case scenario thinking. So I would start and maybe end there to say, we have all these tools to make sure that you don't go to zero.
Okay.
And we know what to do when you start to go low, when you start to feel, all the symptoms of when you feel low, to prevent that from happening.
At a certain age, though, don't people deserve to know what happens if their blood sugar goes to zero? And how do you figure that out? It's got to be case by case, right?
Yes. And I don't know, the stats, to be honest, around how many people have hypoglycemic unawareness and end up having seizures, end up having to be hospitalized, or even death. And we all know in our community, those are real possibilities. And I would imagine it's probably a small amount of people who have hypoglycemic unawareness. So I think at some point, I would say, I think maybe closer to 10, when maybe even 8 to 10, when children have more understanding of death. They might not understand it completely, but they might start asking questions if grandparents are dying. I think you can connect it to that developmental understanding of that things bad can happen, but not to link it to their personal fear, that because I think you could create a real fear of going low.
Yeah.
And
could have
we want to try and avoid that. Right.
Right. Also, I would say that you don't want to attach it to their personal success or failure. Like you definitely don't want to say to somebody, hey, listen, here's why you should do a better job because you don't want to die. Like I don't think that's a valuable way to talk to people, generally speaking.
Correct. No, fear-based motivation, particularly with type 1, does not work. In terms of, even going the opposite way of you don't want to go high or else you're going to go blind.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go low or else you're going to die. I think, those are, number one, it's really rare. And number two, that isn't going to lead to, solid management, blood sugar control.
Right. Yeah. People don't generally do their best thinking when they're in fight or flight mode.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's another one. Ready? My children who don't have diabetes always ask me if they're going to get diabetes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I could even share from growing up.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed first at age 12, 2 years. And in between that time, I have a younger brother and who was approximately 4 years younger. And I know he was concerned. 2 years later, when he was 10, he was diagnosed with type 1. And so then my parents had my sister do the TrialNet at the time. I think it was still called TrialNet. This was many years ago, 30 plus years ago. And she did not have any of the antibodies. But I know that was a certain, it is a very real fear for siblings who do not have type 1, particularly when they see how it can change your life, particularly in the beginning of diagnosis. Yeah. And so what was the specific question?
Well,
what do I tell my children?
Yeah. Well, let's just, you don't have to tell her what to tell them. What would you do? Because I'll tell you right now that I answered that question when it was asked of me with, I hope not. But statistically, you have an elevated chance because Arden has diabetes. But I hope it doesn't happen to you. And then I took my son to TrialNet.
Yeah. So, I think we can't make any guarantees to our children, right? That they're never going to catch a cold or they're never going to break an arm. So I think when, is this something bad going to happen to me in life in general? I think we want to tell our children, well, we hope not, but we're going to do our best to, let you live a life of freedom and enjoyment and play in soccer and sports, but we hope that you don't break an arm. I know I'm kind of globalizing this response, but if something does happen, then, we're going to be here to support you and we're going to get through it as a family.
It's very
is how I would respond.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It's 99% the same vibe as what happens if my blood sugar gets to zero? What happens is we're going to try really hard for that not to happen. If it tries to happen, we're going to do our best to fix it with everything we know. And here are some of the things we know. And
yeah, I think it's, the children, they're asking questions because they're scared.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, we want to reinforce that, that things do happen. We can't protect them from everything, but if something does bad happen or something that we're not planning for, that we are going to do our best to support you as our child to get through it. And we're going to get through it together.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
8 years old. When will my pancreas work again?
Ugh. Yes. I often still ask that question.
Erika's like, I'm still wondering that myself. Oh, what is happening? What is happening? Oh, Erika, I apologize. Hold on one second for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, it's a little early for the ad, but it's a natural break in the conversation, and then everything will just flow after this. So I'm putting it here. I'm here to tell you about TrialNet. TrialNet, of course, is a type 1 diabetes risk screening organization that offers that screening to you at no cost. This is for people who are relatives of someone with type 1. Who's eligible? You qualify for a free risk screening if you are between the ages of 2.5 and 45 and have a parent, brother, sister, or child with type 1 diabetes. You also qualify if you're between the ages of 2.5 and 20 if you have an aunt, uncle, cousin, grandparent, niece, nephew, half-brother, half-sister who has type 1. Last way you can qualify, if you have tested positive for autoantibodies outside of TrialNet, like through another service. And don't forget, this is free to you. All you have to do to sign up is go to trialnet.org/juicebox. You answer a few quick questions to see if you're eligible, and then you join thousands of type 1 families who are on the pathway to prevention. Here's how you get screened. With an in-home test kit, with a lab test kit, or by going to a TrialNet location. All right, so you can either do it at home, they'll send it to you, you do it with a finger stick, and you just send it back with FedEx. I think they come right to your house, just pick it up. Or you go to a lab, like Quest or LabCorp, where they'll do the blood stuff and the sending. Last way, you can ask if there's a TrialNet location near you where you would go to get the blood draw done. Then your results, right? This is what you want to know about. Your results will be received in 4 to 6 weeks. If your results show that you are in the early stages of type 1, TrialNet will schedule a follow-up visit to see if you are eligible for a prevention study. Here's a couple reasons why you may want to know if you have the autoantibodies. Type 1 family members are at a 15 times greater risk to develop T1D than the general population. Type 1 screening will detect if you are in the early stages of type 1. And if you are identified as at risk, TrialNet is here to help you. They have prevention trials. If your screening results show that you are in the early stages of type 1, you may be eligible to join a prevention study, testing ways to slow or stop the disease progression. They also offer ongoing monitoring by top type 1 researchers in the world. And if you do develop type 1, being monitored in a clinical research study like TrialNet decreases your chances of DKA from 30% down to 3%. And you know what else? It helps the greater good. A future without type 1 diabetes starts with you. Research can advance with participants. Research can only advance with participants. The more participants who are involved in clinical research, the faster we'll find answers. So you're in a unique position to identify treatments that will slow or stop type 1 from happening. In the last 20 years, TrialNet has been the leading network in type 1 diabetes prevention research. In addition to being able to accurately predict who is going to develop type 1, TrialNet has now found a way to delay it by leading the teplizumab prevention trial. Teplizumab is the first drug to delay type 1 for a median of 2 years. This is an incredible advancement that gets us one step closer to our ultimate goal. TrialNet.org/juicebox. When they ask how you heard about them, tell them the Juicebox Podcast. But you have to complete the process for it to count for me. So don't just order the kit at home and sit on it. You have to do the work and send it in. Okay, so I'll start over again because we got interrupted. I apologize. A young child, when will my pancreas work again?
Yes. So that is a tough one. I mean, I think it is when I was diagnosed, there was still a lot of talk of we're fighting for a cure, we're walking for a cure. And I think those are all lovely things. I think it's also really helpful to not plant those seeds of not necessarily false hope, but I think you want to be realistic. And so what I was told, and when I talk to, younger children in my office about, will I ever get over this? Will I ever get better? I'm, in terms of like the sick narrative. Right. And I think you have to be honest, particularly I think 8, I think the child can understand that, the pancreas might not work, will probably not work the way it used to. Without help. Now, I think there's a lot of hope for the future about all the various ways that maybe, transplant aside, I don't think that's like a really realistic thing to go into with children. So that has enough complications of its own. But I would say, it probably won't work the way it used to, and we have all these other ways to help your body function, even though it's not going to work the way it used to. Yeah. But I think in that, allowing space for all of the other emotions of, that the child's trying to find some hope in the diagnosis. Are things ever going to change? And so allowing space for the anger and the sadness around it's a loss. Mm-hmm. I know we've talked a lot about that already, but I think allowing for, instead of quickly going to, but it's going to be okay because we have our pump or our CGM, or we have, there are all these other cool possibilities out there that might happen in the future.
Let them have their feelings, experience their complete feelings about it.
Yeah.
The way I talk about it out loud is I hope for a cure and I live like there isn't going to be one.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard you say, I like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just think that's, that just seems reasonable to me. I also, to get a little more thoughtful about it, we haven't exactly cured a whole bunch of things in the course of human history. So, and there's a lot of things that need to be cured.
That's right.
And I think and I not just think, but I've seen the idea of there's going to be a cure stop people from taking good care of themselves in the moment, thinking, this won't matter because in a few years this won't exist anyway. And they can use that as a crutch to not take care of themselves, which.
Yes, absolutely. No, I love that phrase of, I think it's okay to hope, but to be realistic with that hope and live like there isn't going to be one.
Okay. Here's one that's a specific question, but I'm going to make it a little more generic. This person just says, does this mean I can't live in my car now? And says that their child had an ambition before they were diagnosed to live in a car and travel around. But I think what they're asking is, are my dreams not possible now?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I was hoping to do whatever it is. And now with this diagnosis, is that impossible?
Yeah. The answer people usually use used to be, you can do everything except be in the military or fly an airplane, like a passenger. Like it used to be like that thing of course, until you meet a kid that wants to be an airline pilot, and then it's not as comforting. But that idea of like, you can do anything except for these two odd things over here, which you don't want to do anyway. Don't worry about it until they want to be in the military or something like that. So, so what is the real question? The real question is, are my dreams not possible? And I would think if you're young enough, the answer might be, I might say, look, I know right now you want to do this thing, but you might learn or grow or think of something different and you'll be able to do that fine. And if you can't do this thing, I bet you we could find a way for you to do it. Because I don't imagine much you can't do with diabetes, honestly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I know, I think you can be in law enforcement with it.
I've interviewed a police officer that has type 2.
Yeah, that's what I thought. What I thought. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of traveling around in a car, or living in a van or traveling around, the US or wherever, I think that's definitely doable. I would probably want to make sure there was a CGM or something of that nature just for safety. But it feels like, I think upon diagnosis, it feels like there's a loss of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's this particular child or any other children, you feel like, oh no, are all my other dreams or all the other things that I feel like I can do freely or without planning, is that going to be taken away from me, whether it's a certain job or a certain activity or a birthday party, all of those things. And it is a mental shift. So I would say, yes, I think most dreams, most jobs, having children, which I was told might not happen, 35 years ago,
right.
That we are evolving within obviously our diabetes treatment and management, and that most things are possible.
Right.
Yeah. It just takes planning. I mean, that's really, it just takes more planning.
Yeah. And if you are in one of the things that's blocked, like military, like there's a question here from somebody that says that their father is a submariner and the kid wanted to do that and they can't do that now. And so, but I do think that's a valuable, like, honestly, look, there's a lot of 9-year-olds that think they want to be something that don't want to be it when they're 18.
That's right.
So maybe just like maybe you go hopeful, we can take care of it. And then maybe privately you hope it, they change their mind, or you can actually figure out a way to get to it. I'll tell you, that's an overwhelming question here. Here's another overwhelming question here. Some version of why me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
I don't even know what to say about that.
And I remember, I think every child for the most part goes through this stage. And even as the parent, as the caregiver, might explore that in their own processing. I remember even reading a book I think it was right after I was diagnosed, called Why Me, about a child who was diagnosed. It was a fictional book. Mm-hmm. And I think if we were to zoom out, most kids with any kind of sudden change or diagnosis of, that shifts their lifestyle is going to go through that. And I think, I spend a lot of time with my children clients processing this, and you can't rush it. I think it even will come and go throughout maybe your lifetime. Even if you come to a place of acceptance, some children are incredible and say, well, this is just going to be my thing and I'm going to make it work. And they can get there very quickly. Some children really struggle with the anger because it's hard. It's hard as a child, to manage this. I mean, even as a grown adult. And so I think, like any kind of grief process, you might come to a place of acceptance, but it's okay for it to come back. Mm-hmm. And we can't answer that question, right? We can't say, well, this was your plan for your life. I mean, that's the hard part, right? When our children ask us questions that we really can't have clear answers for. And we can say, we don't know, but we know I imagine it feels this, and this. And let's continue to talk about how it feels.
Yeah. Yesterday, I was with Arden while she was getting her senior portraits taken by a photographer. And at some point she moved a certain way. And the woman was like, is that a pod? And Arden goes, yeah. Right. And the lady goes, oh, my daughter's best friend has diabetes and she wears an Omnipod. And, like, it's no great thing. We were only like one town away from where we live. Like, it's not like I was in Massachusetts and I grew up in New Jersey. And the woman said the kid's name. And I said, oh my gosh, I put that kid's first insulin pump on her.
Oh my gosh.
And she goes, what? So the kid's like 5-6 years younger than my daughter, but had played softball. Actually, they listened to this. So this is where they're going to hear this. And I remember them just being, if I remember, like apprehensive about putting on an insulin pump the first time. And I was like, just come to my house and I'll do it for you. Uh-huh. And then all these years later, there we were with a woman taking my daughter's picture. And she's like, oh, my daughter's friends with that girl. So the woman knew about all this and it started a small conversation. And I don't remember the exact question she asked Arden, but it was about like, is this, like, how is it living with diabetes kind of thing? And Arden she just says, I'm good with it. It's fine. And she really meant it. She meant like, and I did think in that moment, I wonder if it'll always be that way, or if she'll wake up one day when she's 36 and just be like, oh my God, I still have diabetes. Like this is just still happening, huh? but I appreciate your answer. So, okay, you're going to keep going. We are going to be crying by the time this is over, just so you know.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, we already covered when will it go away? So it's not fair. Why me? How long can I go without insulin? That one is, I think, right along. I think that falls right into the what happens if I'm zero. Like, right, like it's the same kind of scenario. Like, it's a real health issue. It could end poorly with, decay or death.
Right.
And the answer has to be, you need insulin all the time. You need basal insulin, and you need to bolus for your meals. I think it just has to be like very cut and dry when you talk about stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think I might be reading in too much to the question, but also kind of like, am I going to have a break from this? Yeah. Is there ever going to be a period of time where I can just not take my injections or have my pump on my body? And I think that's the child trying to process, like, is this ever going to end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's 3 questions later. If I don't do insulin, will I die? And I don't know, like, again, that comes down to age again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How old, do you know how old that child is?
Let me look. Oh God.
Well, I guess it probably doesn't necessarily matter. I could probably answer it.
Yeah, this kid,
depending on the age bracket.
This kid's younger because they had 3 questions. I love,
okay.
Here you go. The kid said, if I don't do insulin, will I die? Then she said, I love my diabetes today, but I didn't love it yesterday. When will my diabetes go away? When I was in your tummy, mommy, did I have diabetes too?
Oh,
so she's little.
Yes. Yeah. So she's processing, what does this mean? And like, also because, a younger child has a hard time with time.
Erika, the tummy thing got me. God damn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta blow my nose. Go ahead.
Yes. I think processing like the timing of younger children don't know, like, yesterday, today, tomorrow, in 2 hours, in 2 weeks. Right. So they're trying to understand the permanency, and that's a really hard concept. And like, was I always this way? Did I always have it? It is painful. And I think for the younger children, I would stay, day to day, I would maybe, because I don't think they really understand, like, well, you're going to have this forever.
Yeah.
To say, well, today we're going to do our best today, and then we're going to go to bed, and then tomorrow we're going to do our best again. I think did she start off with, if I don't have insulin, will I die?
That was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say for the younger children, I don't think you need to go to the death. Like, I think we say, well, if you don't have insulin, I would just start in the affirmative. Like, you need insulin to feel good, and excuse me, and to live the life that you want to live, and play, and have, go to school and have play dates and play on sports or dance. And so you need insulin every day to do all those things.
Is reframing important then? Because
yes,
they're asking the questions sort of in a defeatist way. You need to kind of like flip it around and reframe it so that it's not, so that you hear, if I don't do insulin, will I die? You don't even address that. You say, oh no, let me explain to you right now. You need insulin to feel good. Insulin keeps you healthy. So you accentuate the positives, and don't skirt the question, but don't lean into the sadness of it.
Well, or it's obviously, we all know that that's the reality, right? If we don't, type 1s don't have insulin, they will die over, I don't know what the actual length of time is. I usually generically say a week to people, to try and, like, when I'm explaining what my type 1 is to other people.
And you're like, if I eat this cookie right now, I'll be dead in 7 days.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right.
Those questions look at me. Can you eat that? Yeah. So I think for younger children, I would say probably up to like the 8 to 10. I mean, I think as younger children, even the 5, 6, 7-year-olds, they will understand death outside of their own body, right? In terms of pets dying, grandparents dying, I think relating it to their own concept that they might ask those questions even when they are exposed to death. Will I die someday? And I think you can say, well, you could also globalize and say, well, you know what, we're all going to die someday, depending on how your child is in or experience around death. If there's no experience around death, I would keep it in the affirmative of saying, we need insulin to keep you alive or to keep you healthy. We need insulin to keep you happy and doing things you want to do. Mm-hmm. I would say later, 8 to 10, you could have more kind of realistic conversations around, you do need it to keep you alive.
Right. And I go back all the time to a story that a woman told on here once very quickly. Her child with diabetes was younger, was eating. They had an older child that didn't have type 1. The mom had to leave the house, and the older kid was put in charge of making sure that the child ate because they had already given them insulin. Mom leaves. The kid doesn't want to eat her food, his or her food, excuse me. And then the older kid, in a desperate attempt to get them to eat, says, if you don't eat that, you're going to die. And no one had ever said that to the kid before. So the child was just wrecked when the mom got home, like sitting on the floor crying because no one had ever told them that diabetes could kill them.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's how you don't want to find out, is my point.
No,
Yeah.
I think you want to have these types of conversations with your child so that, they aren't shocked.
Yeah, you're going to have to take some responsibility too and really feel your kid out and make sure you're having these conversations at the right times. Like, nobody can tell you what the right exact age is to do something like this. All right.
Yeah, it really depends on your family, the way you talk about things, your family's life experience, exposure to death, and your personal, your comfort level. I think you need to be, as a caregiver, it might be hard to come to terms with that concept, right? That your child might die your child could die if you don't do all the things. But I think, again, going back to like the stats, I don't know, maybe you do, Scott, but like how often people die from a low blood sugar. I mean, obviously there's chronic, if you're not in good and you're not in your managing well. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but I have to tell you that it's an idea that I lean on pretty heavily for my own daughter, right? Which is, there are a lot of people have diabetes. I don't wake up every day to the news that 20,000 more people have died from low blood sugar overnight. We have the best gear we can have. It benefits her health to do things the way we're doing. And I really hate to say this, but if that's how she goes out trying to live well, there are worse ways to die. And so I just think that, I think that the answer is we're going to do the best thing for you we can.
Yes.
There's risks in everything. There's risks in this too.
Yes.
All right. So Erika, the next two questions are both equally horrible in different ways. So here's one for you that got asked a lot, and I genuinely don't know how to answer this one because I don't have a lot of experience in this space, but why did God give me diabetes? So if you're a very religious family, you may be living your whole life on the bend of like, hey, what we have that's good in the world comes from Jesus. What we have that's bad in the world comes from Jesus. Then all of a sudden this happens, and Jesus loves me. Why do I have diabetes? I don't even know.
That's. I hear that question as well, and I think it comes down to your relationship with God. And if you have a faith and you believe in God, it's very natural for a child to then say, well, if God is in control of everything, why did he let this happen to me? That's kind of the question I hear. Why didn't he protect me from this? And I would explore with the child, what is their understanding of how things work in the world? Like, God doesn't plan for people to have car accidents. Like, bad things happen,
right,
that are out of our control. But it doesn't mean that God is not with you, or that God doesn't care, or that God doesn't love you. And ultimately where children will land is, God didn't necessarily give this to me, but he can help me get through this.
Yeah.
In terms of if they have a faith or trust in him. Yeah.
Right. So if you have a religiously faith-based life, you don't want to destroy it in one fell swoop by saying, I don't know, I guess he sucks. You know, like,
right.
So, yeah, you just gotta like that. All right. That makes sense to me.
I think that is also you're wrestling with and trying to find a reason why you were diagnosed, and you're going to be angry at anything and everything initially. Right.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to find like, well, God, I'm angry at God. I'm angry at mom and dad. I'm angry at whatever. Cause we're trying to find a reason or place blame when things just happen that are out of our control.
I find the randomness like comforting, like that it's something bad happened and it's not for like, it just happened. Like some people's genes just kept, people like the way I think of it, my daughter has diabetes because a really long time ago, two people met each other, had babies. And along the course of that happening over and over again led to this autoimmune issue. And that's why she has it. It almost feels like it's nobody's fault. And
right.
Yeah. And that's like comforting to me. I guess my brain just works backwards from.
No, I think that's a helpful rationale as well. You know, that, I mean, it obviously isn't anybody's fault. It's how our genes have, as you said, mutated, right?
It's a horrible thought to look at your wife and think, had I just picked the other girl, this might not have happened. You know what I mean? Or she would have just said no to me, then, this wouldn't happen. But then the kids wouldn't exist. And I'm not willing to give them up for that. So you have to be okay with this. Honestly,
right. Yes.
All right. Here's a little twist. I'm going to tell you what the kid said, but then I'm going to ask you a question for parents.
Okay.
3 years old, had diabetes for about a half a year, falling asleep one night, says, Mom, can you take my diabetes away because I don't want it anymore? Can you take it away from me in the morning? And he wanted to wake up and not be diabetic. She said that oddly enough, at the time they didn't talk about this stuff because they thought the kid didn't have the capacity to even talk through it, but obviously was having these thoughts. So my question around this one is, what should she feel after that happens? And I'm going to just give you another one. Like I was putting Arden to bed one night a long time ago, and when we were just testing her blood sugar before she went to bed, and she just very like matter of factly says, hey, how am I going to do this when I'm in college? And she was like, I don't know, 7 or 8. And I said to her, well, I'm figuring things out right now so that I can teach them to you. And then you're going to know what to do and you'll just be able to do them. And I said, and if you have trouble, you could call me and I could help you because I really understand it. And I'm sure you'll make friends who will help you. And I did all that, but that's not even the story. The story is that I barely got out of her room and closed the door before I cried a lot, very horribly. So what do we do for the people who are being asked these questions?
Oh, well, I know. Yes. My heart goes out to parents who are, I mean, it is incredible that the child asked this. I know many caregivers have shared this, wish to me. I know my parents shared this to me, like, we would do anything to have this instead of you.
Yeah.
I know as parents, you want to protect your children as much as you can. And the fact that this 3-year-old is verbalizing, like, will this go away? Can you take this away? That's really, really painful. I think, so as you asked, how should she feel in the morning, meaning the child or the parents?
I mean, the parent, like what I mean, you can say whatever you're going to say that's going to be valuable for the kid and their progress. But when you get out of the room, you realize I can't take this away. And that's all this kid wants. And now I'm a failure.
Yeah. I think you go out and have a good cry. And because I think there's probably that's going to trigger some grief around the permanency and around hearing actually that your child doesn't want this, right? Doesn't want to live with this. Yeah. And I think, so understanding that's going to, obviously it's causing grief, it's causing sadness, and that you are out of control. We can't take it away from your child. And so the next morning I would, it depends on how the child would wake up, but I would have a conversation with my 3-year-old and just thanking them for sharing that and saying encouraging, that those continued conversations around, wishing it were gone, knowing that we can't take it away. But I think affirming her ability to express that is where I would lean into as a parent. And I think it's okay to be sad with your child.
My takeaway from what you just said is that it's going to take a long time for this to be okay. And that it's a continuing conversation. You don't want to just shut it down or think you're going to fix it with one statement today. And I think that's hard for people to hear. But if you have diabetes in your life, it could take years and decades for this all to flatten out and feel like it's normal. And it doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. I just think it's a very long process, like life. It's a very long, when people say like, oh, you're married, like you got to work at it every day. You don't work at it every day with the idea of like, well, once we've done it for 20 years, we won't have to work at it anymore. Like
right.
it doesn't go that way. So this is part of your life now, and having conversations about it. And these conversations are going to morph. They're going to change. The questions are going to change, and you have to keep having the conversations, or it'll get bottled up somewhere and cause a problem. So
yes. Yeah. I think just, accepting the fact that once your child or you as the caregiver has accepted it, doesn't mean that it's all going to be, rainbows and flowers for the rest of your life. Like it's okay to go back to the frustration and sadness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing that parents do a lot that I think they think is kind, and it might be, and I just want to understand, but it comes up a lot in this thread because then their children ask why they say it. When parents say, I wish this was me and not you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you want to put on a kid? Like, is that kind or is it scary?
Yeah, I think so the parents saying, I wish this was me and not you. I wish I could take this away from you. I wish I had it.
Yeah.
And as I remember distinctly my father saying that multiple times when I was newly diagnosed. And I think that's they are processing their grief and sadness and not being able to control, or protect, quote unquote, protect their child from hard things. I also feel like, is that a hard thing for a child to hear? Is it scary?
Yeah. Should you keep that to yourself, or does it help them to hear it? Because at a certain age, I've said to Arden, not that, but I've said something to her about like, I know this is hard. And she'll be like, no, you don't. And I'm like, oh, she's right. I don't really know. So, like, is that the same kind of vibe? Like, I wish I could take it away. Well, that's nice, but you can't. So why are you saying it to me? Like, I don't know if that, as you get older, if that could be a concern.
Right. I think, sorry, I don't know what is making that noise. Sorry.
That's okay.
Let me turn that off. I think what oh my goodness, what is that? I don't know.
That was hilarious. You're like, don't worry, I've got this. I'll shut it right.
Let me see. It might be okay. All right. Hopefully it doesn't happen again.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Apologies. Okay. So I would say, what the parent is trying to express is their sense of loss, right? And their sadness. So is it helpful? I don't know. I mean, I don't remember feeling, just personally, I don't remember feeling angry when he would say that. I think now, if you're to kind of pull out and zoom out a little bit more again in general, is that helpful? The parent can't take it away, but what they're really trying to say is, I'm so sorry that this is happening to you.
I would do anything for you if I could.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm not making a judgment about it. I don't have a feeling about it one way or the other. It makes me wonder because a lot of people say it.
You do.
Yeah. So
I think I know this is hard. I think you're trying to validate and empathize with your child. I think maybe it could be reframed to, I don't know how hard this is because I don't have it. I'm not the person living with it.
Yeah.
But I can imagine it's really hard.
I'll tell you this. I stopped wondering if I could put myself in my daughter's shoes when she said to me one day, she referring to a severely autistic kid that she knew who had a lot of deficits and whose life wasn't easy. She said that she'd rather be him and not her because at least he can't die from his thing. And I was like, this kid is feeling life on a level that I did not understand. And I am not going to try to put myself in her shoes again in front of her. Because, I mean, she was not very old when she said that.
Wow. Yeah, that is profound. Yeah. And I'm sure it was really hard to hear.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the things I'm great at because of diabetes is staring into the eyes of a person I love without crying when all I want to do is cry. So
yeah.
I'm super good at that now.
Yes. And I think kind of, that's a really normal process though of comparison, of like illness comparison. And gosh, I feel like this would be easier. And that's all just kind of trying to gamble, make sense of it. Like, I wish it feels like it would be easier with this illness and with the other one. But we know that all of it is hard. But you're trying to make sense of it.
Right. Well, there's a lot of sentiment in here about bravery too. And I fall very weird on this idea because I understand the sentiment of my kids are so brave, or the bravest person I know is blah, blah, blah. But I also don't think people deal with medical stuff out of bravery. I think they deal with medical stuff out of necessity. Like, I mean, I would be happy for you not to think of me as brave if I didn't have to get injections or, or have a pump put on me or whatever, stuff that I don't want or that might hurt for a little while or I don't know that that's bravery. It's it's the will to live, really, is what it is.
Right, right. Yeah, and I hear this concept a lot. And parents they're trying to affirm their child in taking steps to keep themselves alive. And I think bravery in the concept of living with type 1 could be instances where maybe the child has finally felt comfortable sharing with their peers, and they maybe have been hiding it for months or years. Or maybe bravery is standing up and teaching your class about it, a general information. I don't know, just like kind of smaller steps within living with it. I think, yes, I guess you are being brave by choosing to do the things to keep yourself alive. I think I'd lean, yes, it's out of necessity too.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I'm not trying to denigrate it, but like I've heard interviews with people who have like been in natural disasters and like, this guy's a hero. And the guy's like, listen, I was just trying to get out of the building. Those people were in front of me. It wasn't happening. So I coordinated and got the hell out of there and got everybody else out too. Like I was just trying to stay alive, and it benefited other people. And so, I mean, but I'm not a hero. Like, do you know what I mean? And I don't know if there's is there any psychological reasons why you wouldn't want to set up a 7-year-old to think that they're, the end all and be all? Like, I don't know. Like it's just it's a weird spot to be in because of diabetes. I think it asks a lot of questions and I don't know all the answers to them.
Yes. I think there can be brave choices while living with type 1 and brave decisions or brave actions while doing all the things that you have to do to keep yourself alive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think those are fine to affirm. Like maybe it's the child was scared to go back to dance class because they didn't want their friends to see their pump or their CGM.
Right.
Or maybe they were afraid to go back to play sports because they didn't want to go low. And I think affirming those decisions, that is being brave, of doing something that they were scared to do or fearful or had some anxiety around because of the type 1 and they chose to do that. I think I would affirm that as being brave to do those things that they were scared to do.
I definitely agree. I didn't, like I said, I don't want to come off like I think that living with diabetes isn't brave. Of course it is. But it's bigger idea here. So here's a nice one. It starts off terrible, but then it ends nice and you don't have to answer it. So take a break, breathe for a second.
Okay.
She says, when her daughter was first diagnosed at 6, she would always ask, how long will I have diabetes and when will it go away? But then at 9 years old, told her mother that it doesn't matter anymore because she still has friends. And I think that maybe is an insight into how kids' minds aren't as, sometimes they're not as, they're not looking for the same things that you're looking for as a resolution, maybe. But I just thought that was very sweet. Like
that is,
you know,
and I think it also is very appropriate, age appropriate, right? Because at 6, they're not understanding the permanency. And then at age 9, because and not understanding, is this going to take away my friends? Is this going to change my life?
Yeah.
And then at 9, they're saying, oh, well, actually, I still have friends. I can still go to school. I can still hopefully do the things I want to do after school. And I still have to manage, but I still can do the things I want. And I have joy.
They didn't see a degradation of the things that they were hoping to have. Now, I mean, there's another kid that said, why does diabetes ruin everything? But that also could be, I mean, listen, a big part of why this podcast exists is because I believe that a lot of the psychological, lightness that can come is after you really understand how to use the insulin, so that you're not just constantly chasing things around and you don't know why things are happening. So maybe that kid's stuff is being ruined because, they're constantly chasing blood sugars and they're high and they're low and they're stopping from doing things. But that's why I think that it's important to understand how to better manage so that you can lessen those moments.
Yes. And we don't know maybe that what's going around, what's surrounding that statement. Is he not feeling good a lot of the time?
Well, yeah, there's a ton of questions in here about why do I feel angry when I'm higher? Why do I feel anxious when I'm lower? All that stuff. And I mean, listen, we've answered those questions in the podcast a million times. Your blood sugar fluctuations impact your brain,
your mood,
and your body, and
absolutely,
your mood, and everything else. To me, the answer to that question is, I don't know, but I'm going to go back to episode 210 of the podcast, listen to the pro tips, and try to figure it out. Honestly, that's a good answer. Okay, here's one that's hilarious. Why does the insurance company take 2 or 3 months to get me a pump? Why can't they have more than one person working on the paperwork?
Good question.
Yeah, and to that, we all say, yeah, what the heck?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I don't know. That is sad though. Does it take that long?
Listen,
I don't know.
What this kid doesn't know is that one day they're going to have the pure joy of getting on the phone with a faithless person at an insurance company and cursing at them. It is so cathartic. You're going to love it.
Oh yes. And they're excited and they want it. I get it.
Yeah, no, but I just trust me. You don't know how great it feels to yell at somebody on the phone who you don't know and have no relationship to. Wait till you have it. It's a lovely moment.
Oh my gosh.
Come on. Have you never said the F word to an insurance company, Erika?
No, I have not actually.
I find it's the quickest way to get resolution.
Oh my gosh.
Society's different now. People don't accept things as well. But I love cursing at people on the phone. I think it makes things move. Actually, I try very hard not to be at all confrontational. I like things to go smoothly. But when it gets down to it, I think a well-placed F-bomb gets you somewhere sometimes.
I'm glad that has worked for you.
That's at least made me feel better for a couple of
minutes. Yeah, I bet.
All right, let's finish on they're all low notes, so let's just finish on a lower note. Will someone want to marry me, and can I have a baby?
I resonate with that one. As a little girl, I definitely asked that. How I'm curious. How old is this child?
Well,
if it's clear or written,
it is not clear.
Okay,
but I can tell you one thing. I've interviewed people, women specifically, of a lot of different age groups that I think wonder this.
Yeah,
is somebody going to want to take me on as a burden? I think is how it feels, and
yes,
that's terrible.
Yes, no, it's a really normal. Both of those are normal questions to have. And as we know, back in the day, I don't know how many years ago, but probably even 40, 50 years, it was very scary to have children with type 1. And we know now, obviously, that you can, and it takes work. But the relationship piece, I think, what the child is kind of revealing by that question is, is there something wrong with me? is this, as you said, am I going to be a burden? And I've had children ask this as well. And we talk about, that there's no one is perfect in going into a relationship or marriage. And that when you find the best fit for you, that everyone will figure it out together, and will work together.
So that's what I tell people. And I'll tell my daughter the same thing. Anybody who doesn't want to be with you because of diabetes, you don't want to be with, first of all. I listen, Erika, if they don't want to marry you because you got a ton of college loans, that I understand. Okay. But, but if somebody, it's not who you are maybe per se, but it is something that you live with. And so if they're not up for that, they're not up for you. And and I don't think you want to spend a lot of time trying to talk somebody into it, to be perfectly honest with you. Move on. And it's one of the reasons why, like, I think every question that we've asked here today, I've answered already throughout the podcast and episodes, but I know people can't listen to everything. So I try to have people on all the time who are in great relationships with other people who are supportive of their diabetes. And I do that partially so that you'll get like, wow, he found a woman that loves him. She found a guy, etc. These two girls got together, whatever it ends up being. People found each other and the diabetes wasn't an issue. And I do think that's the answer to that question. The right person won't care.
Right. Because ultimately that reveals more about them than you.
Yeah.
If it's too scary or too much.
Right.
Yeah.
And also maybe it's not even a judgment of them. Maybe it's just something they can't deal with, or maybe they didn't. I mean, listen, it's hard to know in the moment when you're dating, but there are people you feel like you're in love with who, 20 years later, you realize like, I did really love that person back then, but I couldn't have been married to them for 30 years. Like there's something special about my wife and my relationship. Like, because I don't know how aware everyone is, but like, it's really hard to be with another person for this long. It doesn't. Yeah. And if a lot of things that you can't even imagine when you're young, if they don't mesh well, it's very difficult, and it's too easy to get out of a marriage. So people will bail before they even try sometimes. But that's not my point. My point is, seriously, the right person won't care.
That's right.
That's what I think. So, and you'll probably still end up divorcing them for a different reason. So don't even worry about it.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, come on, Erika. Stop it. How many people do you talk to who are divorced? It's like 1 in 2, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. Look at you, always wanting to be upbeat. I had someone on here recently. I know you have to go, but so I'll end by telling you I just interviewed somebody a couple of weeks ago who at the end of the interview told me that their family saw you and it was a huge help.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So I won't share anybody's personal details because I think that's wrong. But they were very, very complimentary about the time they spent with you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Still can only take patients in California?
Yes, that is still the rule. Yes. But yeah, anywhere in California, because we now have the telehealth comfort. So that's a great option.
Oh, cool. Well, I will definitely put in your URL here. I want you to know that as I just kind of like highlight something here, we got through what I would consider to be a very small fraction of this thread, which I have been scrolling through the entire time I was talking just now.
Okay.
And so I just got to the end. Now, a lot of them might end up being worded differently, but being duplicates of each other. But I really appreciate you spending the time going through this with me, because I felt a real responsibility to this thread after I posted it. And I did not know what to do. Like there was a moment when I was like, oh, I messed up. I shouldn't have done this. I'm not qualified. In my mind, this was going to be like Jenny and I doing like short episodes about questions.
Right.
And it just did not go that way.
Well, I'm glad we were able to get through a portion.
Yeah, me too. Oh, so listen, at the end, let's share this with everybody. My favorite place to cry is in the shower. Where's yours?
Oh, I'm a good car crier, but also the shower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think that's good for people to know that I think that at some point all this is overwhelming and you have to just let go of it, because if you hold on to it, it's debilitating and it'll impact you in ways you'll never see. So I like getting in the shower and crying. You can do it whenever you want to.
Yes, I affirm and support that.
Excellent.
100%.
Erika, thank you very much. Well, first, I want to thank everyone who sent in all of those questions. There are actually more. I'll probably go back and do the rest with Erika at some point. And speaking of Erika, thank you so much for being a great voice on the Juicebox Podcast. Check her out, if you're in California, at erikaforsyth.com. I'd also like to thank TrialNet for being a sponsor of the Juicebox Podcast. I know that ad ran a little long, but it's very important and there's a lot to understand. TrialNet.org/Juicebox. When they ask how you heard about them, please choose Juicebox Podcast with that drop-down box. I hope you have a great day. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. You need information about the podcast? Check out juiceboxpodcast.com. You looking for management stuff? Go find those pro tip episodes. They begin at episode 210. You're also looking for the Defining Diabetes series, How We Eat, After Dark, Algorithm Pumping, and all of the rest. Check it out at juiceboxpodcast.com. And don't forget about the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. It's completely free and has 17,000 people in it talking about diabetes. All right, listen, the episode's over, but if you want to hang out for a couple more minutes, I'm going to explain to you why I think taking the survey at the T1D exchange is so important. And if you don't want to hear it, it's cool. Just push stop and go listen to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. I'm here to ask you to join the T1D exchange registry. And that sounds like a lot, something to join, right? But you're really just taking a survey. Why am I asking you to do that? Here's why. The T1D Exchange is a non-profit research organization dedicated to accelerating therapies and improving care for people living with type 1 diabetes. So that's a very official statement from them. It's 100% true, but it's also kind of dry and boring. And, I understand if you're not super excited by it. Here it is, bare bones. You go to this website, you answer a few questions. It takes you less than 10 minutes. You can do it from your phone. You can do it, while you're sitting on the toilet if you want to. I don't really care. Although you shouldn't sit too long because, anyway, you don't want that problem. Let's get past why you shouldn't sit too long on the toilet and get back to this. The T1D Exchange does good work for people with type 1 diabetes. It's why I took on this thing. They came to me and they said, can you help us get people on the registry? I said, I could try. I don't know if I can. And I've gotten a lot of people on the registry. I'm not going to lie to you, a lot. But this is Diabetes Awareness Month, and I thought maybe you'd be in the spirit to help people with type 1 a little extra in November. The T1D Exchange still needs thousands of you to answer the survey. Why? Well, because they translate real-world experiences into real-world solutions. And those solutions make lives easier for people with type 1. It's their goal to help type 1 families through research at the clinical level, through their quality improvement collaboration, and through research at the personal level through their T1D Exchange. Now, what's the exchange? You can read all about this, by the way, at t1dexchange.org/juicebox, but I appreciate you listening to me as I explain it to you. So the exchange is a research study that's designed to gather evidence, real-world evidence firsthand, and to gather it easily and quickly through this survey. The questionnaire can be done anywhere from your mobile device or, like I said earlier, on the can if you want. Doesn't matter to me. You could be laying in bed or just while you're sitting around at home. And since type 1 is a chronic condition that people live with their entire lives, participants can complete the questionnaire annually if they want to help researchers understand surviving and living with type 1. So imagine what this is you're helping with type 1 diabetes research without leaving your home. You don't have to go to a study center or sign up for some long thing that you have to be in for months or travel for. It's a way for you to help right from your house. Now, there may be opportunities later. I've seen people on Instagram send me pictures. One girl sent me a picture of herself at the airport, and she was on her way to go do a study that she was going to be paid for, actually. And she learned about it through the T1D Exchange and was thanking me because I told her about the exchange. I can think of another person that I saw online who is in the middle of a study for adhesives for a very popular CGM. She had a bunch of adhesives all over her and she was testing them. That was the thing that she was getting paid for. Now, not everybody gets paid for things or gets chosen for stuff, but that opportunity does exist. But you won't find out about it unless you sign up and, complete the survey. Now, you don't have to do those other things. They might contact you with an email and say, hey, you want to do an adhesive study? And you might go, no. And that's it. And no harm, no foul. You haven't hurt anybody's feelings. So that's it, really. It's super simple. It's t1dexchange.org/juicebox. When you get there, you click on join the registry today and then answer the questions. I've done it. The answers are incredibly simple. They're not probing or terribly personal. They're general stuff about living with type 1 diabetes. And then you finish the survey, and that's it. You've helped them, you've helped people living with type 1 diabetes, and you've supported the podcast. All right, let's go for it, right? We have all of November. I don't know how many we can do. I think we could do a lot. Honestly, 30 days. What did they say? 30 days, have November, April, June, and December. All the others have 31. I don't really know all the words to that. Not really the point. But I can tell you this. I have a calculator right here. If I take 1,000, 1, 2, 3 zeros, and I divide it by 30 days, 33 people a day, and we'd have 1,000 at the end of the month. 60 people a day, 2,000. It's doable. There are so many people listening to this podcast that if just a small percentage of you did this, we'd make a huge difference.